Lots of places are now giving people a personal or individual budget. Caroline's son Joseph was one of the first people to have a personal budget, and here Caroline talks about how this happened and the difference it has made to Joe's life.
Joseph's just turned 17. He's a young man that's very active and likes doing sport activities, all them sorts of things that any young lad his age likes to do, really. He's a happy person, but has got quite high support needs, so needs help and support to be able to do the things that he wants to do. He doesn't use words to communicate, he communicates in many other ways, and he struggles at times with controlling what his body can do, so needs some help and guidance around that. Joseph doesn't have a clinical description, mainly because his disabilities derived from him contracting meningitis when he was 6 months old. Our story is a little bit different possibly to other people because you know, Joseph was born fit, healthy and well, and then suddenly overnight this sort of terrible bacterial illness invaded his body and sort of insulted lots of different elements of his brain, and he was in hospital for about 3-4 weeks at the time. And I guess in the early days, just to get him out of hospital was the milestone to actually work for, because he nearly died. So sort of my assumption was that when he was out of hospital he was better, because you don't get discharged out of hospital unless you're better. So obviously we were pleased to have him home, but then over a period of months in the early days it became quite significant how he'd regressed and how he wasn't making his developmental milestones, which there was comparatives there with my niece, who's about 3 months older than him. So you could see evidently that things weren't working out as they should. So there was this general awareness about how he was becoming more and more delayed. But at the age of 12, he goes to a special school, which is out of the borough, of which he was having to get into a taxi and travel well over an hour to go to school. Do the stuff that he was doing within the school with other young people who were finding things challenging as well, I guess, and were struggling themselves. Doing stuff in that community which wasn't familiar to him, of which the people in the community weren't familiar to him, and then having to travel all the way back was really quite difficult for him, I think, and really struggled with that. And so he stayed to go to that school for a number of years, of which we weren't happy, he wasn't happy, but nobody could do anything. We couldn't have any choice in the matter. There wasn't another solution. And we had lots of dialogue with the school and stuff, trying to improve things and make things better, but we still couldn't change the distance into school, and we couldn't change the community in which it was there. The people in the shops, he would never go outside his school day. He just wasn't building up some familiar relationships. So we looked at lots of options, but he maintained going into there for 4 years. What then happened was he turned 16 in his last school year, so he'd be in year 11, turning 16. And we looked at, does he stay on here till he's 19, possibly later, or do we look at other options for when he's actually, coming to the end of year 11, that he could actually opt out of that school setting if we could find something more appropriate. Now then, what happened in his last school year, Joseph became involved in the In Control pilot, which took place in the Wigan area, which was looking at ways of actually changing the way that the service system functioned and operated, from what you call like a model of where people assess your need and you're prescribed and given this type of support regardless whether it's of use to you or not, or whether it works or it doesn't work, to actually looking at having an assessment, but instead of saying here's what we're going to provide, here's the money of what it will cost us to provide, you design the best way that you would like to spend that money. Okay, so we looked at changing from you know, the old system where the home care were coming in. And by this time, as Joseph got a little bit older, the mornings had become really difficult, and I'd had my third child, Jacob, who getting 3 children ready in the morning was really quite difficult. So we asked for some additional support in the morning, of which we got home care coming in for that as well, which initially again worked okay, until the invasion of that and the enormity of that invasion really started to hit home with us, that we weren't just having 2 people coming in, because he was risk assessed as needing 2 people to get him out of the bath. Them 2 people often worked part-time, or they were on what we call rest days and rota-based stuff. So over a period of 6 months, 46 different people had been into our front room in the morning and supported Joseph getting out of the bath, which was absolutely horrendous. But we couldn't manage without it, but it was absolutely invasive and terribly, terribly an uncontrollable situation for us as a family to be able to function in, and really didn't work into its best effect, you know, what it should do. So when we were given this opportunity to get involved in taking the money and designing something ourselves, opposed to put up and shut up with what we got and be having to be eternally grateful for that gift that the local authority was giving us, we really jumped at this opportunity and this chance. So what's happened from there was Joseph's in his 15th year, coming up to 16. We were given a resource allocation, an allocation of money to actually say, here's the money, how would you best like to spend this money? And we felt, because of the complexity around Joseph's needs, that he needed something very individualised and person-centred that would fit in with him, because he's a unique individual. And we know from lots of experiences with him that he doesn't fit into any neat box. So you have to design something that will completely meet him and his needs. So what we decided to do was a kind of total DIY approach to actually his support, and looked at, here's the money, let's bring in other streams of funding that he would become entitled to at the age of 16, like independent living fund, put that all together in one pot and employ our own people with the direct payments money as well, to employ people to work with him. And because of his high support needs, he needs 2 people at any one time to work with him. But prior to this, he was struggling sleeping, he was struggling doing lots of things, and was quite frustrated with himself, and, you know, getting really frustrated with other people. So what we did, we actively sought people to actually come and work with him, and these people came because they wanted to work with him as well, by choice. And we set up a system where 2 people were coming to support him to do ordinary things like go to the gym, go swimming, and do the things that other young people like to do. And that really started to work really well. So we're in his last year at school where we're starting to activate that, and that's working good and it's working well. So what we looked at was, what would we do into his, you know, as he would technically leave school, does he stay on, or do we look at other alternatives? And we knew that the school was a big issue for him, that he really wasn't happy. So what we aimed to do was to actually look at, you know, a lot of money was being spent, £60,000 a year was being spent on his education outside the borough. Now to me that was like cracking a nut with a sledgehammer. I don't think it's that costly, or I don't think it's that complicated to be able to support him. It's how you perceive Joseph and how you get to know him that's a real important thing for him. The other thing is continuity within his life is really important, because if you've got lots of different people from different places working with him, they will all be giving him different rules to follow. And when your body's quite disorganised and you have a problem functioning, doing this, that and the other, and you're having 10 different types of rules to be able to do it, that would make your situation even more confusing. So the main things we were looking for was around continuity of support, something that was based in his community and something that made real good sense to him as a young person. So what we looked at was a local provider, which the obvious point would be Wigan and Lee College, who could actually provide some kind of support to Joseph. Now, they'd never really experienced providing support to anybody with quite high support needs. There were people with moderate learning difficulties using Wigan and Lee College, but really there weren't people around to be able to say, yes, we could actually put a course on for Joseph and people not dissimilar to Joseph, and integrate them into part of the college life and everything. Now, that didn't seem possible until we went and met the principal of the college, and we eventually got to see the principal. And I said to him, you know, there aren't really any courses for Joe as a young person. You don't meet those folks, you know, Joe type of needs. And he thought they did, but he went around and looked and came back and said, no, you're absolutely right. But fair play to with him, you know, within a few weeks he developed a course for young people to actually be able to access who have varying needs. And so a course became available for Joseph to start after the summer holidays in September. Now, the course was okay, that's the simple bit, but how do we actually get him and support him on the course was really important. So going off the continuity and the people that had started to know him and worked really well with him, is that we devised a system so that the college could pay his own personal assistants to be able to support him within the college setting. And looked at that and got that up and running. The other thing was to look at was how does he actually get to college, because the local education authority still had a statutory responsibility to take him, transport him to his place of education. When we asked other young people about going to college, what was important for them and where did you meet your friends and kindle relationships, they said on things like on the bus going to college, they said, you know, in the refectory, you know, because in lessons you've got to book to and do the work. So we thought, right, it's silly him going to college and going in a taxi. Let's look at the opportunity for him to actually travel alongside his peers who were also going in the same direction to college. So we worked with the Education Authority in saying, how can we do this? So the Education Authority have been really receptive to all this idea. And instead of actually putting and prescribing the transport, they give us the money via social services and it comes out as a direct payment. So how it works is that Joseph gets up in the morning, supported by his family because that feels a better situation for us. His personal assistants come to the house at about 8 in the morning, help him with his bag and all them sorts of things. Walk to the bus stop, get on the bus and go to college. As they go into college, they stay with him and help him, you know, with all the things it has to do in college and lunchtimes, etc. And then at the other end of the college day, he comes out of college. Some days he might go off to the gym after college. Other days he might come home and, you know, so he's got a real flexible life and things that he wants to do. The most important thing is that he's got great continuity in his life. There's only 5 people that actually currently work with him, and they all work on a 2-to-1 basis with him. And that money all comes into one pot and we make that work for the best, in the best possible way for Joseph. That every penny of that money is spent on his actual support and allows him to have a real flexible, fulfilling life.